This episode of Cinemajaw is brought to you by Jackbox Games. Get 5 hilarious party games in the Jackbox Party Pack 5. It's now available on Xbox One, PS4, Nintendo Switch, Steam, and more. Play games like You Don't Know Jack, Full Steam, Split the Room, Mad vs. City, Patently Stupid, and Zeeple Dome with friends this weekend. Visit jackboxgames.com for more info. And we thank them for their support. You're listening to Cinemajaw, the greatest movies podcast ever, recorded on location at Cards Against Humanity in Chicago. My name is Matt Kay, and with me is...
Rye the movie guy. And sitting over there, behind the glass, inside that fish tank is Filmy and Phil.
How's it going, guys?
This week on Cinemajaw, Matt, we get a little bit smarter on this podcast.
It's about damn time.
It's hard to believe, but we're going to get smarter, Matt.
Well, I'm ready, man. I've been learning, reading up, getting ready.
We are covering our top 5 movies that make you smarter or change your perception.
Perspective.
Right.
I believe that's the first parenthetical title to a podcast we've ever had.
This was because we were going back and forth on what the perfect topic would be for our guest this week.
Right.
And, it's a big guest, so we wanted a good topic, and you were saying, let's go with something about movies that make you smarter, and I was saying, his movies can really change your perspective on things, and we mashed it together, and I think we knocked it out of the park.
Well, geez.
I'd hate to pat myself on the back, but...
Have a little humility there, right?
Top 5 movies that make you smarter. This is going to be fun.
It is.
And I alluded to this. We are going to have a very big guest joining us this week.
Yes, yeah. Finally, Steve James, who's been kind of a dream guest of ours for a very long time, Oscar-nominated documentarian. Listen, if you don't know who Steve James is, what are you doing listening to Cinemajaw? So,
Can't wait to talk to Steve. I'm very excited to talk to him. Besides that, we do have even more going on, don't we, Phil?
Oh, yeah. We're also going to go eye for an eye on If Beale Street Could Talk.
And we have reviews of Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse.
Wow. And in honor of If Beale Street Could Talk, I thought this would be a good time for Matt to take on Steve in Street Movie Trivia. Think of movies with street in the title.
Okay, Alex Trebek.
All right?
Yep.
All right. We've been doing this now 401 times. I got to come up with,
Hey, your creativity never ceases to amaze me, Rye.
Yeah. This is going to be a jam-packed jaw, Matt.
As always.
So, without further ado, you said this, Matt. This was when we started taking this podcast serious, and this is a true story. We actually got together, me and Matt, and we said, hey, who are some of our dream guests, people who are local in the area that we would love to have come into the studio and be able to talk film with us? And our next guest probably was at the very top of the list.
Sure.
And very excited, as you mentioned, Academy Award nominated documentarian, made such movies as Hoop Dreams, The Interrupters, Life Itself. It's an honor even just to say this. Steve James, welcome to Cinemajaw.
Great to be here. Miracle on 34th Street's my first answer.
He's already thinking trivia.
Yeah, wow. Competitive?
Just a little.
Okay. I'm going down.
But bad at trivia.
Same.
Well, we'll see how this goes. Looking over your filmography, we wanted to ramp it up here because your latest project is out on the Starz Network, America to Me. Going back, I wanted to know at what age and what was it that drew you to the idea that you wanted to be a documentarian filmmaker?
Well, the documentary part came later. I first just wanted to be a real filmmaker, make movies. And that happened when I was probably a junior in college. I like movies. I happened to take this class that was like a film appreciation class where usually it was like a history of, survey class in film. I was fortunate, I think, to miss that. The professor was tired of doing that, so he did a film on auteurs. And so we looked at the work of Ernst Lubitsch, Jean Renoir, Arthur Penn, and Alfred Hitchcock. It was a long time ago.
Yeah.
And
still all relevant, though, especially Hitchcock, to me at least.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I just, coming out of that class, I thought, I don't know, it'd be fun to make movies. I had no idea how that could possibly happen in Virginia, where I was going to school. That led to me eventually at Southern Illinois University, where my girlfriend at the time, who became my wife, still is my wife. This is a long time ago.
Congrats.
Thanks. We just celebrated our anniversary not long ago. Anyway, I ended up at Southern Illinois University because she was going there. I didn't want to break up. And they had a whole film program at this school. And I thought I'd go out there and study film a little bit, learn a little bit about it, and see if there's any way to try to do anything with it. While I was out there, though, the best professor at SIU was a guy that loved documentary, had made some documentaries, and I think that's what really hooked me to documentary.
That's awesome, man. Do you remember the professor's name?
Oh, yeah. Mike Covell. He's retired now for some years, but yeah, he, we looked at a lot of documentaries in the very first production class I took, and then I was making little Super 8 documentaries for the class, and one of the first documentaries I did was a documentary about people and the stuff they have in the back of their cars.
Wow.
That's awesome.
I mean,
and how that defines who you are, right?
Do you still have those Super 8s?
Yeah, I do have them somewhere.
Do you think they'll ever see the light of day? I would love to see that.
Maybe, I don't know. And then the other documentary I did for that class was on my landlady, where the apartment we were renting, she wore a patch and played the organ and sang religious tunes.
Interesting person.
Yeah, she was very interesting.
So then after SIU, you moved up to Chicago, I take it?
Yes. I had the idea for Hoop Dreams while I was at SIU. I played a lot of ball in my day, and I played it recreationally at SIU. And I just had this epiphany one day when I was at the gym that it would be interesting to do a film about what the game means to black ball players, and with the idea of maybe going to a playground court to kind of capture that whole world and milieu. So I had the idea while I was at SIU, and then when I moved to Chicago, I knew Chicago would be a great place to try to do that story.
This movie, I mean, changed your life, right? Did you know when you were making it that it would be such a tremendous hit?
No, not at all. No, I mean, when we were making it, myself, and Peter Gilbert, and Frederick Marks, my partners on it, we didn't, first of all, we didn't get any real money. We started on $2,000 from the Illinois Arts Council that I got. And actually, Mike Covell was on the panel that year, so I think it was an inside job. He got me the money. And so that $2,000, we didn't get another dime until like 2.5, 3 years into filming. And then we got money
That's crazy.
Yeah, we got some money from Corporation for Public Broadcasting, and then eventually the money that really saved us was from the MacArthur Foundation here in Chicago. So no, our joke, it wasn't really a joke at the time, was the more we kept filming because we needed to keep filming until we raised some money to finish it, and that wasn't completely a joke. And I remember our joke at the time because it grew until we eventually knew that it was going to be probably 3 hours long. And it was going to be on public television, and it was likely going to be on at 11 o'clock at night, probably on public television, because who was going to program a 3-hour documentary on unknown basketball players in prime time? And our joke is that after all these years of work, that it would be on, and people we knew we'd see them the next day, and they would be like, "Oh crap, your thing was on last night, wasn't it?"
Which was totally not the case.
No, I mean, at the time, we had no idea that it would play theatrically. You have to understand that back then, this is 1994 when the film was completed. I don't think a film historian should double check this, or maybe you guys, if you consider yourself film historians. I don't know.
Not so much.
We can at least throw it in the fish tank.
Yeah, throw it in the fish tank.
Yeah.
I don't think there had ever been a film that originated on video that had played theatrically. I don't think
I can't refute that. Yeah. I mean,
I don't think, and I remember when the MacArthur guy at the MacArthur Foundation who engineered to get us the money, Woody Wickham, great guy, met with me at a breakfast, and he said, "Well, if we fund this, is there any chance this could play in a movie theater?" And I said, "Nope, no way." I told him, I said, no way, chance. No way. It's on video. It's 3 hours long. I mean, no way. It'll never happen. So, I was way too principled. I said, don't fund this if you think it's going to play in a movie theater. I don't know why I said that, but I really believe that was the case. And then that wasn't the case. And when we went to Sundance with the film, where it premiered, the guys that were selling it for us, local guys, told us that if anybody asks what we shot it on, tell them film.
Did you?
Yeah. It came up in the Q&A. Someone was like, what is that exactly we're watching? Because we transferred it. Up until that time, most of the transferring of video to film was car commercials.
Okay.
Because people would, I don't know, you're too young for this, but back then there were car commercials in the movie theater and they always looked like crap because they had been shot on video and transferred up-res to film and shown in movie theaters. So it looked surprisingly good, but it didn't look like film. And so people were like, what are we looking at? And we were like, film. And they look at us like, wow, okay, it's pretty lousy film stock that these guys were shooting with. But, we lied.
So
awesome.
So you got a distributor, somebody bought the movie at Sundance?
Oh, yeah. So the key to that was Siskel and Ebert. While we were at Sundance, actually before we even got to Sundance, because back then, if you got invited to Sundance, they told you you could come for the first half of the festival or the second half of the festival. You couldn't come for the whole festival. They wouldn't put you up for the whole festival.
Right.
That's changed. But so we chose the second half because we were in competition. We thought, well, we should be around for the award ceremony. Who knows? Maybe we'll win something, So, but literally right before we left to go to Sundance, Siskel and Ebert went on their show for the week and said the guys that were selling it had gotten them to watch the film because one of the guys that was selling it was John Iltis, who was a very great, successful PR guy for features in town. So he knew those guys, and he talked them into coming to watch it. He knew that Siskel was a big basketball fan, had Bulls tickets, great seats. And he knew that Roger was not a sports fan, but he told Gene, this is a great basketball story. He told Roger, this is not just about basketball. This is about race.
A true PR guy.
Yeah,
right?
totally.
Yeah.
And so they were intrigued enough that and out of a favor to him, they showed up and watched it, even though it had no distribution. It was just going to Sundance. And they then went on their show while it was at Sundance and, gave this incredible rave to the film and said, there's this film playing at Sundance. You can't see it anywhere else. It deserves distribution, blah, 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 blah. And so that just went around the festival. We weren't even there yet. And that went around the festival like wildfire. I remember Gordon Quinn, it was actually on the night, we had a little party at our house. We knew they were going to say something about the film. We knew it would be positive because why would they go on and trash a film that, So we had a little party at my house, and when it ended, Gordon Quinn of Cartemquin, I remember him going, well, Steve James is going to get laid tonight at Sundance. Of course, I wasn't at Sundance, and I was happily married, and my wife was sitting right there, and of course, that was a totally inappropriate thing to say. But at any rate, we went to Sundance, and we suddenly had interest in it from a distribution standpoint, and that was because people loved the movie, but also because Siskel and Ebert, who were so powerful then, had gone and made this like proclamation.
Right.
They really championed it.
They did.
Oh my God.
And really, so the part that I remember is, my dad was obviously an avid Ebert and Siskel, viewer and watched every single week, was that they actually went on when the Academy Awards came out and they made this plea to the Academy saying, hey, this isn't just the best documentary of the year, but it's the best picture of the year. And of course, history now, as we look back, this unbelievable controversy goes on where Hoop Dreams doesn't get a nomination for the best picture, and it doesn't even get one for best documentary.
No.
And as bad as that is, and as wrong as that is, the bad publicity, in a way, it caused this, stir. And what they say is all publicity is good.
Yeah.
So,
no, I think the day they announced the awards, we gathered at Cartemquin early in the morning, and Fine Line was our distributor. They had arranged for a lot of press, local press mainly, to be there to capture the big moment of either us getting a Best Picture nomination, because there was talk that we might get that, or Best Documentary nomination. And when neither happened, we got nominated for editing, and I was one of the editors, so I was nominated. And I got to go to the ceremony and lose. But, you know, suddenly it was like it went from big disappointment to the local media was like, oh my God, now we've got something, right?
Oh yeah,
you know,
they bit their teeth right into it.
Yeah, but we didn't really talk to the press much about it, and it was, you know, I thought honestly, I thought the whole thing was kind of hilarious in a way because so many good things had happened to the film that I wasn't that broken up about it at all. And I never looked at the Academy Awards as an arbiter of great films.
True.
So I
Very well said.
So I went home, and I'll never forget it. I got home, and the phone rang, and it was Roger. You know, he got my phone number somehow. He's a newspaper guy, and he goes, "It's Roger Ebert," and I was like, "Oh, hi, Roger." He goes, "Are you not outraged?" And I was like, well, you know, Roger, I kind of take the long view in this, and I started into a nothing answer, and he just cut me off, and he goes, "You're not going to say anything, are you?" I was like, no. He goes, "I got to go," and he hung up because he wanted a quote, and I wasn't going to give it to him. He could tell right away. It was like, this is not who I want to talk to.
Yeah.
But yeah, those guys were so angry about it, and then trumpeted Hoop Dreams throughout. They trumpeted. I think they featured us prominently on their show 3 or 4 times that year.
Right. And eventually Ebert gave it his favorite film of the 1990s of the decade. What an honor. I mean, you can't.
Yeah.
You'd rather want that than probably the Academy Award.
Yeah. No, I mean, the next best thing actually for Hoop Dreams to not getting a Best Picture nomination, you know, which would have been crazy, unbelievable, was not being nominated at all. That was Hoop Dreams up until that point had not been it had been critical success, but not a box office success, you know, within the prism of being a documentary.
But the controversy stirred up some box office interest.
Not only that, Fine Line played it very smartly. They were ready. Hoop Dreams went as wide as it ever went right on the heels of the nomination. And they were banking on either big success or big controversy, and they were prepared for both. So Hoop Dreams was in 250 theaters like the weekend after the nominations, which back then was pretty phenomenal. I mean, Michael Moore gets into more theaters now, I guess. But
Sure.
But back then, I mean, this was at a time when documentaries even being in theaters were rare, and when they were, it was like, you know, a few theaters at a time going around the country.
Yeah, and art houses places as well.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, what an incredible film. I mean, I own it and have seen it numerous times. And actually, I went to Nazareth Academy, connecting it a little bit here, who was the school that defeated St. Joe's
right.
in the movie. So to us, because my whole family went to Nazareth, it had that little connection, you know, like, oh, we beat St. Joe's while they were filming. It was such a great story.
Yeah.
So
You were the villain is kind of what you're saying.
Totally.
But you didn't stop there with the basketball documentaries. You made a wonderful 30 for 30 on Allen Iverson, which I actually just watched this week, which was about his trial that I didn't really know much about. I know Allen Iverson, but he actually was involved in this brawl right when he was in high school, getting ready to go to college, and actually did prison time. And watching that, and now I think seeing that like this week, but knowing what I know about your filmography and knowing your work, how telling that was of a story that must have happened in your town and affected you in a way that you reflects your work today.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's interesting you bring that film up because that all happened while we were finishing Hoop Dreams. That happened in 1993. And I remember very distinctly, you know, I was here in Chicago editing, and my dad, who was a great athlete, you know, in my hometown and followed sports closely and had sent me clippings about Allen Iverson and what a remarkable player he was before all this happened to him. This bowling alley brawl, this racial brawl. Anyway, when all that hit, he was telling me about it all, and then it was getting into the national news. And I remember very distinctly thinking, I should be home filming this. But I can't because we're finishing Hoop Dreams.
You sort of had your hands full there.
Had our hands full, and I didn't have any money anyway. So it's like, it was just, but I remember thinking distinctly, like, there's a really significant, important story going on in my hometown right now, and I'm here. And that's too bad in a way, but
But you got around to it.
But I got around to it, and I got to do a different film than I would have done then. Back then, it would have been much more in the Hoop Dreams vein of total, more verite-driven kind of project. When 30 for 30 came along and asked me and a bunch of filmmakers, is there a story you'd like to tell that you think is not told or you're passionate about, I immediately thought of this story and was able to make this film and go back basically 17 years later and do a film about what happened.
Now, in that film, obviously, it's almost a personal story because you're in the movie.
Yeah.
You interview your mom in the film as well. And in Hoop Dreams, when I think about it, you do a lot of like voiceover.
Right.
And I caught some of this voiceover also in America to Me when you're sort of going over the football game. And I thought, reminds me of that Hoop Dreams, right?
Yeah.
But I was going to ask you, when do you make a decision before going into the film that you're going to be in the movie, just voiceover work, or does that just sort of come up naturally and you decide at the moment?
It's more organic. With Hoop Dreams, we thought we would maybe hire someone. We'd like try to hire someone to be the narrator. And, most fun thing is most people, if they haven't seen Hoop Dreams for a while, they don't even remember that there's narration in it because it's not what you remember about it, which is good. We didn't want it to be memorable. We wanted it to be just utilitarian and functional and get out of the way, and so that the film, instead of being 3 hours or 4 hours, it could be 3 hours. Mm-hmm. And but we were going to hire someone to do it with whatever little money we had, and then because I was doing it during the editing, at a certain point, Gordon Quinn said, "I don't know, I just think you should do it. It's not going to be professional, but that feels right. It feels like."
Honest.
It should be honest. It should feel, even if it's not totally clear, that it comes from the filmmakers, or it's not, and that we shouldn't hire a black voice, say, to be the narrator, because it's 3 white guys making the movie. So I ended up doing it, and then I made a film after that called Stevie that was a very personal film that I'm very much in, and I'm in it, and it also has narration, and that's a very different kind of narration. And the Iverson film also has a different kind of narration because I'm in it as well. And I felt like the whole idea with the Iverson film was I'm going back to my hometown that I share with Allen Iverson to try to understand what happened 17 years ago. And this is as much a kind of my journey back to my hometown to understand it as it is looking at Allen Iverson's life, which has nothing to do with me personally.
That's such a cool approach.
It is.
Yeah.
And then, actually the life itself has a little bit of narration too that's a little more personal of nature. And that happened simply because I was also sharing my emails exchanges with Roger. Mm-hmm. And it just felt like, felt like the right thing to do.
Well, let's jump to life itself. How'd that come about? I know it was basically a memoir that Roger had wrote, and
right.
You had optioned this book and you were going to make it. That happened, I believe, before his illness.
Well, before the cancer that ultimately took his life, but he had the jaw cancer and okay. had been the surgeries and the disfigurement that happened as a result of that. It happened some years earlier.
How rough of a movie was that to make? I mean, we reviewed it here on the show. It's such a beautiful movie and so intimate. But I was thinking, how do you get through that? I mean, because you're close to Roger too.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, here's the funny thing. That was a project that was brought to me by Garrett Bash, who was a producer and works with Steve Zalian at the time. And so Steve was an executive producer on it, and Garrett was a producer. They are the ones that had optioned the memoir, and they reached out to me and said, "Would you be interested in doing this film?" And I was interested in reading the memoir. I'd heard about it, but I hadn't read it. And I said, "Well, let me read the memoir and decide." The thing is that I was not that close to Roger. I knew Roger, and I'd run into him from time to time here in Chicago, mostly over the years, or sometimes at Sundance if I had a film there. But I wasn't that close to him. In fact, I thought there was this like firewall between
critics and filmmakers.
Yeah, and I tried to honor that, like really honor that. So like if I ran into Roger at a film event in Chicago, I would go up, say hi, and say hi to Chaz, and then like get out of there. And it's funny because Chaz will tell you now, like she said, we used to think it was kind of strange because we liked you, But you'd come up and you'd like talk for like 1 minute and then run off. And I was like, why is he running off, you know? And it was because I thought that it was inappropriate for me to have any kind of relationship with Roger. Well, when I read the memoir, I discovered that Roger didn't do this with many filmmakers, but there was a handful of filmmakers who he developed like close friendships with. And then I thought, oh, maybe he didn't really want a friendship with me. But, you know, that may have been true. But in a way, it was good that I did not know Roger that well, that I wasn't a good friend of his. I mean, I think a good friend of his would have made perhaps a very good movie. It would have been a very different movie. But it freed me up to really discover Roger in ways. And it also freed me up that I wasn't beholden to Roger. Mm-hmm. And Roger was totally supportive of wanting this to be a well-rounded portrait of him that didn't shy away from his flaws.
Right, warts and all.
Yeah, warts and all. He wanted that. And I felt a freedom to do that, not just from him, but also from the fact that I wasn't beholden to him. Now, if I'd read the memoir and thought he was a complete asshole from his memoir, I wouldn't have done the movie for two reasons. One is Roger had been too important to my career with Hoop Dreams, but also with films like Stevie or The Interrupters. He was a real champion. So I would have felt like I'm not going to do the takedown on Roger Ebert when he's been this good to me.
Yeah.
And I also have a fundamental belief that I'm not interested in making films about people. I'm not interested in doing takedowns on people in films. That's not the kind of filmmaker I am. It doesn't mean I have to like everything about a subject, a person, of course, but I have to have a fundamental affection for that person or a belief in that person for me to want to spend the time to make a film about them.
Yeah, you see the value in it in every subject that you film, and that's clear. I wanted to ask about The Interrupter, since you brought it up a little bit. You at least, not in all your movies, but a lot of them, steer toward social justice issues. Mm-hmm. Probably none more prevalent than in The Interrupters. I'm wondering, this is kind of like a big question, but do you think, not necessarily your film specifically, but movies have the power to actually affect real changes in society and the world?
I think there are films that have had real impact. Kirby Dick is a filmmaker, especially in his more recent work. You know, he started out as more of an arty kind of filmmaker, but he's become much more of a provocateur, and he did a film about rape, in the military.
May come up later on somebody's list.
Okay. And he did one fairly recently about sexual assault on campus, right? And particularly the Pentagon film, and maybe the one on colleges too, but the Pentagon film, it had an impact, right? I think a measurable impact in terms of, culturally, what went on there and how they've made some changes. So, and I feel in a film like The Interrupters, for example, mm-hmm. Rahm Emanuel contributed through the city, not personally, $1 million to the organization Ceasefire, which has changed its name since, in the wake of The Interrupters coming out for the work they did. So, you could say that was measurable impact in some way. But let's face it, violence in Chicago is worse. In the last couple of years, it's gotten worse than ever. Worse than since the early 90s, late 80s. So how do you measure impact? I have a tendency to believe that impact is something I see much more measurable in anecdotal ways, in people or a specific school or an institution, embracing the film. It's hard to sit back and say it changes the world.
Yeah, it's the death by 1,000 cuts, the small granular changes that you see.
Yeah, and I think moving people and changing individual minds is meaningful change, and I feel like I've seen that.
For sure. Brings us to your latest project, America to Me, which is a groundbreaking documentary series, can be seen on the Starz Network. Did this originally, the concept anyways, was it going to be a movie, or was it always intended to be a documentary series?
Well, first and foremost, I never thought it would even be a standalone documentary. Back when I initially had the idea, when my kids were in school there, I thought there's no way I would be able to make this because the school would not allow it. And
and really quick for the jawheads and the people listening that may not know of America, to me, the concept here is that Steve was able to get unbelievable access into a high school here. It's a local school in Oak Park, just outside of Chicago, and he is able to follow along certain teenagers. And it's tough to explain the situation of Oak Park without knowing it. But these are teenagers of color that are in a predominantly, not predominantly, white
54% white school,
and how it affects them, how they're learning. I mean, a lot of the topics are just stuff that people don't want to necessarily talk about.
Yeah, I've lived in Oak Park, with my wife, and my kids are now grown and don't live there, but for years. And I've always been struck by, here's this incredibly liberal community that takes enormous pride in that. and they have a very well-funded public school system there, which is one of the reasons why people move to Oak Park. And it's very diverse. And it's sort of like, despite all of those advantages, they have failed their black students in particular for decades. And why is that? How is that? So that was the initial germ of the idea, which is one of the reasons why I thought the school would never want to let us in there to look at that. And I was right about that. But when I found out from John Condney, who's a teacher there and became a producer on the series, when I found out that it wasn't up to the principal and the district superintendent whether we could come in there, it would be up to the school board, and he thought that the school board made up of parents would be open to this idea. Then we went about the process of pitching to do this. And when I pitched it as a film. But at one of the school board meetings when we were having a discussion with the board, one of the board members said, how do you propose to deal with all of these things you want to deal with in a single documentary? And I said, well, have you seen how long my documentaries are? I actually said that, and they laughed, but then they said, but no, seriously. And I was like, well, I think you make a good point. And, I think you're right. And so I'll make a promise to you. But my promise is I will try to raise the money to do this as a miniseries. I can't assure you of that, but I'll make the promise that I will make every effort to do it because I think you're right. And then I went off and I started to try to raise money for it, and I finally found a partner in Participant Media that got it. Diane Wireman got it and said, I want to do it, and that's how it got made.
And so it's a 10-part series.
Didn't start out to be 10 parts. But classic Steve James, the contract said 4 to 6 hours. I told Participant, there's no way it's going to be 4. They go, I know. But, just leave it in the contract as 4 to 6 hours. Then it went to 8. Then it went to 10.
Wow.
and then, Participant said, 10, that's it, no more. And then I managed to squeeze an extra half hour for episode 10 because it's 90 minutes long.
Well done.
Yeah.
But, I do say that it's groundbreaking, and it really is. I mean, we don't get to see this topic talked about on television shows. It seems like it's maybe in specialty films, like we were saying earlier, but to have the access to be on a Starz network and have it be able to be downloaded anywhere, for it to be that available, we just don't see those kind of topics. So I thank you for it.
Well, thank you. It wrestles and grapples with race and white privilege and education and not in the usual places. The thing I didn't want to do, because there's been a lot of great films that have delved into this topic, is to go to a poor public Chicago school with little funding in a besieged neighborhood, because all the reasons why those schools fail their students are pretty clear and obvious. They're not easily solved, but they're obvious what's going on there. And I wanted to go to a place where it's not so obvious and where the racism is deeper and more hidden. And I also wanted to tell the stories of Black and biracial, although we follow white kids too. They come in starting in episode 5. I wanted to tell the stories of Black and biracial kids who are not growing up in those desperate neighborhoods, because I don't think there's been nearly enough attention. And I point the finger squarely at myself when I say this, as well as other filmmakers. There hasn't been nearly enough attention paid to the lives of Black and biracial teenagers in this country who grow up in more stable settings and more stable families, even if they're single parent families. And I felt like that's something we need more of those stories. But the real risk and why it was harder to raise money, besides from a participant, which just totally got it, is that those stories aren't perceived as dramatic, right? They're not dramatic.
Right. Yeah.
And one of the things I'm really proud about the series, and this isn't just, I'm proud of, my efforts, but I'm so proud of the other directors involved, Kevin Shaw, Rebecca Parrish, Bing Liu, who's got, maybe the documentary of the year in Minding the Gap out, and the edit,
Great one.
And the edit team, David Simpson, Leslie Simmer, and Elena Schmelter, and Ruben Daniels, and the producing team. I mean, there's so many people involved in making something this massive. But one of the things I'm really proud about is that I feel like we invested viewers in the lives of these kids, and their lives matter without having to be desperate and on the edge of poverty and despair. And this is a series that's very entertaining. I mean, there's a lot of humor. I think something that my work as a whole is not recognized as being is there's a lot of humor in my films. A lot in most of them. Stevie doesn't have a lot of laughs, but has a few. But I really feel, and it's part of the Kartemquin approach to filmmaking actually, is that people are funny, and people even in serious situations grappling with serious issues, humor is a part of life, and we really try to bring that forward because not only does it make it more entertaining, which is good, it's also truer to the lives of people.
Yeah, more
Well
honest.
said.
Yeah, well said.
If you haven't seen this series or heard of it, America to Me, I can't recommend it enough. You can get it on the Starz app. Nowadays, you can find it everywhere. I bought the episodes on Amazon Prime.
Yep.
It's pretty much, look for it on any one of the streaming services.
It's a bargain.
It is.
You can get 10 and a half hours of quality entertainment.
Yes.
With a little enlightenment thrown in, hopefully. And what is it, like $9 a month on Amazon Prime? If
Perfect.
You have that.
That's less than $1 an hour, right?
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. So
We're
do
good.
it, jawheads. We usually like to plug, Twitter. Do you got a Twitter handle? Do you tweet? Are you on Facebook? All that good stuff.
I'm on Facebook, but I'm not a very active Facebook guy, and I'm not on Twitter at all. I went on Twitter once. I was pressured to sign up for a Twitter account. So I signed up, and then I got one follower pretty quickly, and then I was like, I don't want to do this, so I closed it down.
What about a website, Steve? Is there a place for people to check you out online?
No, I don't really have a website either. You can check me out through Kartemquin. A lot of my docs, not all of them, have been through Kartemquin, so that's not a bad place to go.
Cool. Do it, guys.
Sounds good. So Steve is sitting in on this entire job. He has his top 5 movies that made him smarter or changed his perspective. I can't wait to hear his picks.
Yeah, same.
I have a feeling they're going to be better than ours.
They're definitely going to be better than mine.
That's a given, Matt.
Probably.
I kid. All right. This brings us to a segment called Eye for an Eye. Phil, what do we got?
Yeah, eye for an eye. If Beale Street could talk. A woman in Harlem desperately scrambles to prove her fiancé's innocence of a crime while carrying their first child. The film is adapted from the 1974 novel by American writer James Baldwin. The film stars Kiki Lane, Stephen James, Regina King, and Brian Tyree Henry.
Not this Stephen James, right?
No, we get mixed up all the time.
Didn't even put that together when I was reading. If Beale Street Could Talk is directed by Barry Jenkins, who in 2016 gave us the Best Picture winner, Moonlight. Ryan, we're throwing it on over to you, buddy.
Yeah, I was just commenting before we started recording. I was telling you, Matt, that this is like the last big one that I need to see before I can pencil in my top 10 of the year and start thinking of all the great movies that we've seen this year. So, yes, interested. Barry Jenkins, totally pumped to see this. Matt?
Same. I mean, and pretty much for the reasons you stated. I think this is kind of required viewing. That's all I have to say.
Steve, interested in this one?
What's with the thing you're doing here?
Yeah, the buzzer. That means if you're interested, I ring the bell.
Oh, okay.
But if you're going to give this one an ignore.
No, I'm dying to see it.
See, you get the bell.
All right.
What would it have sounded like, Rye?
Well, this would have been
He's very proud of that sound machine, Steve.
You can't have that sound when we're talking about If Beale Street Can Talk. Very pumped. How about you, Phil?
I'm interested as well. I feel like we haven't heard from Regina King in a very long time, which is mostly why I'm excited.
All right.
For interested.
I mean, yeah. This one's getting a lot of buzz. So.
Yes. We will have to see it and get a review out for the Jawheads.
Yes, we will.
Speaking of reviews, Matt, I think most people who listen to this podcast know this by now. I'm not into comics. Did not read them as a kid, and I'm not going to go gung-ho about a superhero film like so many others.
I sound like Bill Maher.
Matt Kay. So it should be of no surprise to hear that I had never heard of Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse up until a couple weeks ago when I was invited to an upcoming press screening. A new take on Spider-Man, animated, story by Phil Lord, the Lego movie guy. Why not? I swung down to the theater to check it out.
My name is Peter Parker. I'm pretty sure you know the rest. I saved the city, fell in love, then I saved the city again and again and again. Look, I'm a comic book, a cereal, I did a Christmas album, and a so-so popsicle. But this isn't about me. Not anymore.
Spider-Man swings in once a day, zip-zap-zop in his little mask and answers to no one. I love you, Miles.
Yeah, I know, Dad.
You gotta say I love you back.
Dad, are you serious?
I wanna hear it.
Look at this place.
Dad, I love you.
Dad, I love you.
That's a copy.
Matt, I have so many good things to say about this film, I don't know where to start. So as the movie says, let's start at the beginning. Miles Morales is a teenager growing up in Brooklyn. One day, while spray painting a mural with his uncle, he is bit by a radioactive spider. Sound familiar? The next day, he finds he has powers like climbing up walls. As he returns to the scene of where the spider bit him, he walks in on the real Spider-Man fighting some bad guys and trying to stop some sort of machine. Spider-Man fails. The machine he was trying to stop has the ability to open other dimensions. What we come to learn is that each dimension has its own particular Spider-Man. We are inside the dimension in which Miles is Spider-Man. But because this machine has been triggered, other Spider-Men and women from various dimensions appear. Spider-Pig, Spider-Woman, Spider-Noir, Penny Parker, Peter Parker. Together, they must stop the men behind this and at the same time try to get back to their dimension. This may sound confusing, but Phil Lord's script makes it easy to understand, not to mention the script is witty, funny, exciting, and fresh. I love this story. Now, I read in an interview that filmmakers Lord and Miller wanted the film to feel like you walked inside a comic book, and they were excited to tell the story in a way that a live-action film could not. I am happy to report they did just that. The animation rocks. They used all kinds of elements along the way to bring the movie to life. Split screens, dialogue bubbles, amazing action sequences. The look of this film is nothing short of spectacular. The various Spider people are hilarious. In particular, I loved Spider-Noir, who is voiced by Nick Cage. The story provides themes of family, diversity, believing in yourself, and trusting others. Now, I hold Spider-Man 2 in high regard, and I have to say, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse might just be the best Spider-Man movie of all time. As for 2018, in my opinion, this is the best superhero film of the year. It is also clearly the best animated film of the year. I love this thing.
Wait, well, best superhero film of the year.
Hands down.
Come on.
Yes.
All right. Well,
in my opinion.
Okay, fair.
That's what I'm saying.
And dude, just to hear you getting excited about this movie means it must be truly special, and I'm gonna really, really love it. Finally, you're starting to see the light. You're coming around.
What I think I was so shocked about was this fact that after seeing the movie, reading this in an interview of Lord saying, we wanted to make the viewer feel like they actually stepped into a comic book. And it's difficult to point out all the things that they did, these split screens and these
right. Well,
dialogue
Ang Lee
bubbles.
tried that with the live-action Hulk.
Yeah, which...
Kind of a failure.
Right.
I like it, but whatever. It's art housey.
But that was live action, so I don't know how well it would have
Translated,
worked.
yeah.
Translated. Here with the animation and the style that they use and the speed and the energy that the film has, it works glowingly. I mean, it's just like, it's exactly what they aimed for. They actually put you in the feeling of that you're inside this story that's taking place in a comic book style.
I am proud of you, Rye, because this is the exact kind of thing I would expect you to say, ridiculous.
No, and the other thing was, when I heard the premise that there were these other spider people in dimensions, so goofy.
There it is.
Come on, right?
Yeah.
My normal take. I actually want to read the Spider-Man, this whole comic.
Wow.
I would actually get into this comic, I think.
Hey, dude, there's a since the 60s. I mean, we're going back decades.
Because then I'm thinking like, oh, are there other stories inside these other dimensions?
Yes.
Well, I know that now. I'm saying, I'm thinking out loud as I'm watching the movie, like, this is fantastic.
You called him Spider Pig, but it's Peter Porker, the Amazing Spider Ham, who's one of my favorites. I actually own issue number 1.
Do you?
Yeah, I hope it'll go up in value.
Well, I'll say this. Like I said, blown away by the movie, and I will actually probably go see it again in the theater.
Wow.
When I would never thought I would have said that, but I saw it.
I don't think you've ever said that about a superhero movie,
The press
period.
screening we had was shown in 2D. Highly recommend trying to see this one in 3D if you can, because I could tell looking at it that some of the scenes would be really trippy, and the animation would just come to life that much more in 3D.
Well, you called it spectacular. Would you say it was amazing?
It was amazing.
Would you say it was sensational?
Sensational indeed.
All right. Let's break this down a little bit. Were there any scenes you had trouble with, Ryan?
Trouble with? None, honestly.
Wow.
Really. I mean, there was no point where I thought, wow, that was not handled right. Literally, this movie is for what they set out to do, perfectly made.
Jeez, how often do you say that?
I'm telling you, I was blown away. I'll just remind people to stay to the very end of the movie for... I'm going to go on ledge here and say the funniest Marvel Easter egg to date.
That's a bold statement.
And I talked to other critics who are more into the comic, E-Man, Folly.
Right, some more pop culturalists.
All agreed about this Easter egg. They were like, oh, that was fantastic. And I think they understood it on a level
Boy, I got to see this.
I didn't.
I am so jealous that you got to the press screening and I didn't. All right, what about your favorite scene? Was it that post-credits thing?
I would say that it's really the opening of the film. Starts with this high energy feeling and this quick look back on Peter Parker. And it makes fun of past moments inside Spider-Man pop culture. But it doesn't do it in that like nostalgia way. It's so fast that it makes fun of everything in really quick of the Tobey Maguire highlights. And then that's like the backstory. And at that point, it's like it's a funny gag. But what at that point we don't realize is that we're going to get a little bit of backstory on all of the spider people and their dimensions.
Who voices...
This comes up again.
Do you know who voices Peter Parker?
It's this Jake Johnson.
Okay.
He's known, but he's not big name.
Oh, well, maybe this will raise his star a little bit.
Yeah.
All right. So what about any influences?
Influences, I mentioned the high energy this movie has very much, if you'll remember, the opening of the Lego movie. How fun that was.
Yeah.
And the pacing
Everything is
of it,
off,
everything was
awesome.
going,
Yeah.
right? It nails that kind of energy. So it reminded me of that. And obviously, Phil Lord did both these. So
Yeah, wow. Can't wait for his next movie. Do you got a quote for the poster?
Poster I got, I'm just going to go ahead and say it. Best Spider-Man movie this dimension has ever seen.
Well done. All right, Rye. What did you learn?
I learned that the Spider-Verse is a comic I would like. And as I said, this is a movie that made me understand why people love comics.
Dude.
Can you believe that?
No, I never thought those words would come out of your head.
I'm shocked as well.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah. Talk about a movie that you learn something. I learned how great comics could be.
Wow, man. That is a really great thing to hear.
Yeah. 4 Jaws.
Jesus.
For Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse.
You think this will appear on your top 10 of the year?
Honestly, there's a good chance.
Wow.
If it doesn't hit the top 10, it is going to be right near
number 11.
Yeah.
Wow.
It is that good. I enjoyed the hell out of this movie. I think everybody listening to this podcast, if you get out there and see it, you will do the same. Like I said, I learned that I can like comics, man.
That's great. I mean, I wasn't expecting a whole lot from this movie being an animated film. I mean, obviously with the Lego movie pedigree, it sort of raised its bar a little bit, but great to hear that, right?
Yeah. And speaking of learning, that is our topic for our top 5 this week, Matt. Top 5 movies that make you smarter or change your perspective. Was this a difficult list for you to come up with, Steve, or when we gave you the topic, did you know 5 right off the bat?
No, I mean, I had to think about it. Now, I think the way I want to mend it, though, is that there's no way I can come up with the top 5 films of my whatever. So I just thought of 5 films, and I tried to skew towards more recent stuff, including even stuff this year that I think could make you smarter, to maybe encourage people to go out and see some of that. So
I'm excited. What do you got sitting at number 5?
Oh, at number 5, we're starting at the back. Okay. Oh, do I have to number them? I'm just going to say there's no rhyme or reason to these.
Sure.
Okay.
Sure.
In my case, I know this is this is what you guys do.
We understand.
Yeah. It's the drama of it all. I know. I get it. I like drama, but I'm not too dramatic in this regard. There's a film out this year that I think is really very thought-provoking. There's more than one. Bisbee 17. Do you know that film?
No.
Have not seen it.
It's a documentary, and it's by Robert Greene, who did Actress, and now I'm spacing on the film that he made after Actress that just came out a couple of years ago.
Throw it in the fish tank. Bingo.
I hope he doesn't listen to this because he'll be really pissed at me. He's a friend of mine. But that's not why his film's on the list. Bisbee 17 is a film in which he went back to a community out in Arizona that was celebrating a 100th anniversary of a sort of terrible thing that happened with immigrant laborers who were working and then got basically put on trains and shipped out of town over a labor dispute.
Yikes.
Right. And what Robert does is he goes back, and it's kind of a feature of his films. He's interested in the connections between fiction and documentary, and a lot of his work navigates those boundaries. And what he does in this film is that he goes back and to the community, which he has a history with going to, and he gets the locals to reenact what happened 100 years earlier.
Oh, yes, I have heard of this.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's nuts.
And it's really great because not only do you learn some great and sort of unknown history for most of us, but you learn in this film the way history kind of lives in us and in these residents, who, of course, none of whom were around back then.
Aren't some of them the relatives, though?
Some of them are relatives, and so they're playing roles sometimes of their relatives, and in some cases not at all. But people really get into their roles, and they discover things about themselves and about their beliefs through reenacting this historical moment.
Sounds awesome.
I did hear about this, and definitely much higher on my list now,
Put it on the queue.
for sure.
Yeah, you should review it.
All right. Swings it around to my number 5. And I think Christopher Nolan's entire filmography, with the exception of Dunkirk, which I panned, deserves to be on this list. I mean, he really, especially like a Memento, which kind of literally flipped the script on how storytelling is done, changed things going forward. But I'm settling in on the mind-bending Interstellar, which, with it, the way it plays with time and relativity, I think that alone really kind of makes you think and makes you feel smart watching it. You know, like, oh, I understand time dilation, things like this. And at the end, there's a little bit of a cheat with the whole Tesseract that he falls into, but just saying the word Tesseract makes you sound smart, so right. I'm going with that at number 5.
No, I wrestled with putting that on the list.
I think it belongs.
Yeah. Now, my number 5 pick actually is one going with the way it changed my perspective on a social issue or an issue or problem that we have in the country and probably everywhere in the world. The film itself, I would actually say, is not that great, and this is a drama. 2010, it was entitled The Soloist. It was directed by Joe Wright, and it starred Robert Downey Jr. And Jamie Foxx. And it was based on a true story where Jamie Foxx plays a character named Nathaniel, who is a homeless person, but he plays the violin, and he's classically trained.
He's like a virtuoso.
At the violin. And this columnist who Robert Downey Jr. plays sees him and starts writing about him in these columns, and hence we get the book and then later the movie, The Soloist. Now, I went and I saw this not knowing the whole backstory or the issue that it was going to bring up, but that issue is homelessness and where these people come from. And being someone that's lived in Chicago, a large city, for a long time, probably at the time I had saw The Soloist, I definitely wasn't as mature as I am now, Matt. But it's a lot. It's very easy.
It's difficult to imagine.
It's easy to walk by homeless people and just be annoyed, or I can't stand. They're always on this corner, and so on and so forth.
Right.
And it was after seeing this movie and realizing that all these homeless people come from a home that had a mom and a dad, or they had a brother, and something went wrong, a mental illness, a lot of times brought on by maybe going to serve the country or abuse. There was a shift there after I saw the movie that literally changed the way I always interact with the homeless now. I'm not saying that I give them hundreds of dollars, but like the movie says, talk to them like they're a regular human being, because they are, but it's so easy to not think of it that way. But this movie completely changed my perspective on it, and
That's great.
I'm better for it.
Good,
So.
good for you, man. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, my next one, to just rebound off of Interstellar, it's a film that it means a lot to me on so many levels, but it was also incredibly thought-provoking, 2001: Space Odyssey.
Oh, yeah.
When I saw that back in the day, I first saw it when I was in college, which wasn't too many years after it came out. And I just remember I was really starting to get interested in film, and I was just sort of blown away by the ambition of it, the scope of it, the mystery of it. And I went to it with some guys from the dorm who got quite high before they went. I did not, and I think that was a good thing. Because when I came out of it, I was just so exhilarated, and I felt like I got that movie, right? I felt like I got it, and I remember trying to explain it to them, and they were like, dude, I didn't see any of that. So it was just a profound experience, and I think Kubrick's film, that started a love affair for me with Kubrick's work and the sort of scope and ambition of it. That I could name other films, but that's the one I would single of his work as the most thought-provoking, stuck with me for days, made me ruminate on the mystery of it all, and
Love it.
Still incredibly relevant, right? I mean, it gets shown the AI angle, and you look at Gravity and Interstellar.
Yeah, and I've said it on the podcast before. I've made a deal with myself to watch that movie every 10 years and see how it changes with your perspective on where you're at in life. And it has. I've seen it like about 3 times now on that path. It's amazing.
Well, I believe the Music Box likes to show it in 70 millimeters.
That's
so
a treat.
if you get a chance.
That is a treat.
I saw it a few years ago at the Music Box in 70 millimeter, and if you can permit this one little anecdote. Sure. It was classic Music Box experience. We're watching the movie, and I went with a friend of mine who was a huge Kubrick fan, and it gets to that point where they get into the lunar landing module, and as it's going across the planet, right, or across the moon, there's dead silence, right, because there's no sound. And I remember when the movie came out, they were making like, oh, it's brilliant. It's like there's no sound in space, and he plays dead silence. And we were like, making that point to each other. And then suddenly it went inside the lunar landing module, and the guys were talking, and it was still dead silence. And I remember thinking, wait, that's not right. The sound system had gone out.
Bummer.
Good stuff.
They just got a big upgrade over there.
Yeah.
No, it's great. This was a few years ago, but it was a classic Music Box moment.
For sure. All right.
They're going to hate me if they listen to this.
Nah.
I love the Music Box. I go there I went to see Barry Lyndon there not long ago. So
it's a great venue for sure. At number 4, this is another one that actually sort of changed my behavior, right? Not quite as profound as The Soloist had, the effect it had on you. But I think this was eye-opening for just a lot of Americans, and a bit of a groundbreaking documentary, 2004's Super Size Me. Mm-hmm. Bit of a crossover, right? I think certainly we'd have documentaries before that had crossover theatrical releases, like a Hoop Dreams and some of Michael Moore's stuff. But this kind of just blew up, right? Super Size Me, like everyone was talking, you have to see this movie. And Morgan Spurlock kind of knocked it out of the park here.
And it really changed a lot. We got rid of the supersize order at McDonald's after the movie came out. So,
yeah, they have a lot healthier fare. It tastes terrible, I think, but they do have healthier fare.
Yeah. They do, yeah. I mean, we talked earlier about movies changing the world. There you go, Super Size Me.
Hey, I'm going to stick with documentaries and big-time documentarians with Michael Moore. You could pick a lot of his movies is teaching you something here. One that I thought did an excellent job, and we don't talk about enough, is Where to Invade Next, which was his movie where he went to Europe and various countries and basically tried to pick out what they do well that we might not be doing well and try to bring those ideas back to the United States. And so he visits, various countries over there. And I remember one of them, it's in France, where they treat lunch as an actual class. So instead of lunchtime like we have here in America and the kids are just running around a lunchroom, they're actually learning about the food, how to prepare the food, cook, and they're eating, but it's part of their school day.
Right. Such a subtle change, but so effective.
Because we have such an issue with not teaching kids the proper way and things to eat.
Here's pizza and a slushie.
And it's just getting worse and worse. And I thought but there's so many other things that he goes over there and I think casts a light on like, hey, look at what these countries are doing. There are ways we can improve. Liked it.
Yeah, I think Sicko is one of my favorite Michael Moore movies for the reasons of how educational it was in terms of that. My next one is Barry Jenkins' first film.
Oh,
Moonlight. Yeah.
I was just totally blown away by that film, and it stuck with me for days. And part of what I think the reason it did is not only its brilliantly made film, but it was such a different way to look at a part of Black America that we think we know, even from other very good films, and have certain very stereotypical ideas about. The drug dealer played by how do you say his name? Ali.
Yeah,
Mahershala Ali is such a remarkable character in that film. We're so used to seeing drug dealers as being, cutthroat,
scum,
vicious scum.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And he was not that at all. He was completely believable. Of course, the young kid at the center of it is remarkable, but the mom as well. I mean, he's dealing with really fraught kinds of characters in movies, and particularly in the portrayal of Black America and in that part of Black America, but yet doing it with such originality and heart and empathy. That's a film that is just such a major accomplishment, has stuck with me.
Agreed.
Yeah, good pick. All right. Do you guys remember Thank You for Smoking?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
All right, cool. I'm glad I'm not alone. That's my next pick. Thank You for Smoking. I guess the reason why I would say it's thought-provoking and really made me smarter is just how manipulative PR can be. And there's really no better example in modern history than the tobacco industry. And this is, it's a bit of a farce and certainly a lot of artistic license taken in the movie, but it's true that the tobacco industry really did lobby and bring all sorts of data to the table that showed that smoking was perfectly harmless. And, of course now we know there's all a bunch of lies, but the way this movie just presents it so cavalierly, and I think it's more relevant than ever in this world we're living in where facts are so malleable and cheap almost, worth a revisit for that reason alone.
I was going to say, I think I saw that only in the theater and probably haven't went back and saw it. And
what year was this?
Who's the actor? It's Harvey Dent.
Aaron Eckhart.
Aaron Eckhart, right. Love that. I should give that another spin.
He's really good at this is a comedy, and you don't think of him necessarily as a comedy guy, but he's good in this.
Yeah, nice pick.
Thanks.
My number 3 is a director that Steve brought up earlier, Kirby Dick, in a movie that I think for me, showed me a subject that I didn't even know was an issue, and that is the 2012 documentary, The Invisible War,
Right.
which is about sexual assault in the U.S. military. And this is a rough watch if people out there aren't,
Easily triggered.
right.
Yeah.
I mean, be prepared. I don't want people just to walk into this one on a whimsical Saturday night,
Yeah.
This is a heavy film, and it's a difficult film to watch, but it's an important film because I had no idea the scope and the issues that we're dealing with, because we know how the military is, and they want to handle these within the military
Right.
and not go into the court systems when it comes to, filing charges against these people who have clearly raped or assaulted women and men in the military. I was blown away by this movie.
Yeah, great choice.
Good one.
This is going to be an unconventional choice, and I don't even know if you guys have seen this film because it's not considered one of his most noteworthy, is Chris Marker's Le Joli Mai. The great French poetic filmmaker Chris Marker made this film back in 1963. I don't know, you might want to check me on that. And it's a portrait of Paris as France is coming out of a war with Algeria. And it's just this incredibly impressionistic, kind of mosaic, serendipitous portrait of the city and its people. I saw it when I was in grad school, and it was one of those films that made me want to be a documentary filmmaker. But the other thing that it really, it's very illuminating about Paris at that time and France and people, but it's also for as a budding filmmaker, it was it made me feel like you can do anything in a documentary because it's also a very eclectic film within itself. He does everything, and anything is fair game, and it's a really beautiful film.
Another one to add to the queue.
For sure.
Yeah.
Definitely, man. All right. We talked a little bit earlier about sort of thought-provoking movies. This one, and I was struggling to avoid making my entire list documentaries because obviously that genre, if you will, sort of lends itself to learning things. That's what it's all about. But this is a narrative, a fictional film, Primer. Shane Carruth kind of burst onto the scene. Have you seen this one,
I've not seen it. I've heard about it. I should see it.
We were talking about Nolan earlier in Memento and how he sort of shuffled the deck with storytelling. Yeah, he may have done that first, but Primer does it way better. This movie, honestly, you could watch it 10 times and still find something new every time. It's that layered. It is the quintessential onion of a movie. And talk about feeling smarter when you watch it. It's about time travel, and I know that's going to turn a lot of people off, but I'm telling you, give this one a chance because it is probably the smartest time travel movie. And time travel is really just a plot device. It's just so smart, and the way that it literally, it's like the snake eating its own tail by the end of the movie. Twisted, amazing, great plots. One of my favorite films, so check it out.
There's no doubt there's a moment, and it can actually be probably different for everybody watching the movie when that moment happens, but everybody has that Keanu Reeves moment where you're like, whoa, because you finally figure out what's going on. Now, that may happen at a different point in the movie for you, but once you catch on, you're like, well, this movie's brilliant.
Yeah. Have you watched it more than once?
More than once, yeah.
Okay.
2 times.
I think you have to. Yeah, 2 times minimum.
Love it. My number 2, and I agree with you, Matt, tried not to go straight 5 documentaries. So I have another drama in here. And speaking of the great Roger Ebert, he gave that speech talking about how movies are an empathy machine, right? And it's such a great line. And here's one where, again, I think when I saw it, it changed my perspective on the way people grow up. And I realized, wow, so many people in this world have it so much more difficult than me or my friends. And this was Brie Larson's big breakout movie in 2013. The film, it was my movie of the year that year, Short Term 12.
Mm-hmm. That's good.
And this
really
is
good
where
movie.
she plays the supervisor of a group home for troubled teens. Mm-hmm. And just that word, a group home for troubled teens, like that's not a world that I know. You know, I come from what I would say is a pretty normal family. And to see this movie and see the struggles that kids go through, to imagine that there's kids out there that have parents that don't really even want to have the kids around, and that this is all they have is this home of other kids, and that's the closest thing they know to a family and any type of structure in their life, was mind-boggling to me. Like, it was one of those, again, that just sort of shifted me, that thought, man, the next time I see somebody that's having a struggle, be compassionate, try to help them, talk to them. And it just changed me a little bit. You know?
Wow. I had no idea you were that deep, Brie.
Yeah. You know, Steve James is in the room. I got to,
Step your game up a little. Yeah.
Wow, no, that's a great choice. I love that movie.
Thank you. That is a great one.
Yeah. These aren't like top 5. I mean, these aren't in descending order or anything. But one of the films that has really stuck with me the most in recent years is Ex Machina.
Wow. Yes. We're big fans here.
Yes, we love this one.
And I've seen it, a couple of times now, which for me, I rarely watch movies more than once because I just feel like I'm so behind on watching stuff. I don't. But I watched that film twice, and the second time I liked it even more. And it's a great model of economical filmmaking with great ambition. And it's beautifully put together, and the acting is phenomenal. But, the thing that really sticks with me is I've had for a while a kind of very fascination with the whole idea of where we are headed in terms of things like artificial intelligence. And I know there's lots of TV shows and lots of that are dealing with this, and some of them are good and whatever. But this one really distilled down the essence of what's in play and what's at risk. It's so smart on just grappling with the future and making it very palpable and real and scary. And it's a film that really, really has stuck with me in ways that a lot of films, even films I really like, don't.
I agree. I mean, it's probably the greatest retelling almost of the Frankenstein story.
Yeah.
I mean, that's certainly a seed in there for sure.
And you know how there's some movies that you become more fond of as time goes by? This is one of those for me. I can already tell the more we talk about it, because we do this every week, it comes up. It's like, yes, that Ex Machina is just phenomenal. It just keeps going uphill for me. So.
Yeah, and then Alicia Vikander goes and does Tomb Raider.
Right.
Yeah.
It can't all be hits, right?
No, can't. All right. Topping off my list is a film that absolutely changed my perspective. Now, of course, I'm aware of racism and that it exists, but I don't think any film sort of distilled it in a more poignant and understandable way and really shined a light on systematic racism in this country better than Ava DuVernay's 13th.
Great film.
Absolutely changed my perspective in a major way. And I always like to think of myself as liberal and non-racist person, but what this film does is shine lights in places you didn't look before in your own self. And just for that alone, it really opened my eyes to a lot of things in myself and in the country, and just a powerhouse of a movie. So
It's a great one.
yeah.
My number one, what I'm topping off my list, was something that probably affected all of us in the room, was the financial crisis in the 2000s. And a lot at that time, not being a financial guy, like knowing the numbers and the housing and all this good stuff, a lot of times that can be overwhelming. And I thought just a wonderful documentary that encapsulated all that and explained it to, the common man, was the 2010 movie Inside Job, which was narrated by Matt Damon, and it's broken up into 5 parts that really...
Is it The Big Short, like the documentary version?
A little bit.
Okay.
In a way, it's broken up into 5 parts that it starts with, like, basically, everything that was going good for the country, why we were headed the way we were, and then goes in from there. And it dissects it in a way where, when we're talking about the financial crisis, and you're watching a documentary, bore, right? But no, it's entertaining, it's educational. Like I said, Matt Damon does the narration. I don't know, I just watched it, and from that, I always felt, I finally understand it a little bit more than I should, and because of that, I'm even angered more that we haven't made the appropriate changes, and that we're probably looking at it right now.
Staring down the barrel of the same gun.
Here we go again.
Yeah.
It bothers me,
Yeah.
So,
More people need to see that movie.
yes, I agree.
I mean, it doesn't have Margot Robbie in the tub explaining whatever it is she was explaining, but
But hey, it's got a Matt Damon voiceover.
got Matt Damon. Right.
Any honorable mentions before we go to break?
Won't You Be My Neighbor definitely changed my perspective on parenting. And it made me feel friendlier for the rest of that month. I think it's a little too recent. That's why I didn't necessarily put it on my list. And Exit Through the Gift Shop, which I think is just a brilliant movie on so many levels, but I've talked about it way too much, so I left it off.
Sure.
Well, I Am Not Your Negro is an amazing film, and one talk about one that shakes you to your core in terms of really thinking about, as a white person, how you engage around race or don't engage around race. That's one that does it for me. That could easily have been in the ones we talked about tonight. And even though I'm, an executive producer on it, I really didn't have that much at all to do with the film. But I do think that Minding the Gap, being Lou's film that's out now, is also a really terrific film about masculinity and about fatherhood or failed fatherhood in some really powerful and emotional ways.
Yeah, and we reviewed that on the show.
Yeah.
You did, Matt. It may be now streaming on Hulu.
Yes, it
Okay,
is.
I just wanted to make sure.
It is.
So if you have not seen it, Jawheads, it's out there to see if you have Hulu. So Minding the Gap.
How about you, Ryan? Got any?
Only one that wasn't mentioned was Food Inc. I'm very big on learning about food, and I've talked about the sugar documentary that Kitty Couric had done. That had an effect on me. But also Food Inc., looking at the whole process of the food, all the way down to companies trying to profit on selling us the cheapest food there is, the farmers, Monsanto. It encapsulates everything in one movie.
They literally show you how the sausage is made.
Correct.
Yeah.
But I think that's important because we want to know what we're putting into our bodies.
I agree, man. Definitely.
If we missed your favorite movie that you felt made you smarter, changed your perspective in some way, and you have Twitter pulled up, shoot us a tweet at Cinemajaw, or you can always email us, feedback@cinemajaw.com. Coming up, we have a review of Mowgli, plus Matt vs. Steve in street movie trivia. Stick with us.
The December Riddle is here, and it is the hardest one yet. Just so you know, we do have a clue in the bag. You just have to write us at feedback@cinemajaw.com, and we will give you the clue. Here's the riddle. If you think you got this one, write us. Here it is. This will be the single hardest riddle you solve this year. I started in a cowboy movie, then 15 years later, kept some cowboys from their golden glory. Recently, I was seen in an old-time bank robbery film. Speaking of old, in 1984, I was a kid. However, by then, I had already been in more than 5 films. One thing about me, I married Michael Douglas's daughter. Better guess right, because I will bully you if you get it wrong. Who am I? If you think you know, write us at feedback@cinemajaw.com, and one lucky winner will get a prize.
To get ourselves a treat.
Delicious things to eat.
The popcorn can't be beat. The sparkling drinks are just dandy. The chocolate bars and the candy.
Jawheads, can you believe we are coming to the end of 2018? It's been a spectacular year so far. hanging out with Steve James, and a couple of questions that we didn't get in the first interview that I wanted to ask you. One, you got a guy like a Werner Herzog, also a documentarian, but he dips his hands sometimes in dramatic features.
Right.
Have you been tempted lately to maybe make a dramatic feature instead of documentary?
Well, I did make that classic film Prefontaine back in 1997. It's recognized universally as either the first or second best film on Steve Prefontaine, depending on your point of view. No, I would very much like to do a narrative, scripted again, and I've got some thoughts in that direction. A script I can't really talk about that set in Chicago that I would love to make if the stars align.
That's tantalizing. I like it.
Now, you were back at the Academy Awards for Abacus, Too Small to Jail.
Small enough to jail.
Small enough to jail.
It's a tough one. Yeah.
But we reviewed it here on the show, and it was a wonderful documentary that looked at the only bank that was caught up in this whole housing crisis.
Right. Speaking of the financial crisis.
Yeah.
Unbelievable story. Do you come across this in the newspaper? What leads you to make the documentary, I guess?
Well, in that case, the producer on that, Mark Mitten, Chicagoan, was close friends with the family, the Sungs, had been for about 10 years, and they were telling him what they were up to and having to deal with, and he thought, somebody should be doing something on this, because no one was really covering it to any degree outside the Chinese American press in New York City. The New York Times wrote exactly 2 articles on it over the course of 3 or 4 years. So he brought it to me, and I agreed, and we just decided to go tell that story.
It's amazing. That image, I'll never forget, of the family in basically a chain gang where they're all handcuffed together.
Right.
Crazy.
Yeah. It was an unbelievable story.
Great movie.
Hey, when you go to the Academy Awards and you meet these other documentarians that put you in the group, are you friendly with some of these that we've mentioned? Like, have you talked to a Michael Moore or a Werner Herzog? Or, like, in my mind, I think these are the great documentarians of our time. Are you talking to these guys?
Yeah, I mean, neither of those guys were nominated the year I was nominated, so they weren't there. Herzog I met because I interviewed him for Life Itself. That was interesting. He did his Soldier of Cinema. Roger is a soldier of cinema. He did that.
Everyone does. Everyone that has met Werner Herzog does an impression of him,
and does a pretty good impression, I think.
Yeah.
I looked into the abyss. So he did that line, like literally about 2 minutes into the interview. He did that, and then he said, I think I'm done. And I was like, oh, no, we're just getting started. So he was quite entertaining to meet. I've met Michael over the years and been to his film festival, Traverse City, and had friendly interactions with him. At the ceremony that I was at last year, I knew some of the filmmakers already, so that was great. But others I didn't know, and so there's a kind of camaraderie, I think, and I think it's pretty genuine in the doc community. People are I think at least less overtly competitive about winning, and so that's good.
That is good.
Yeah.
Good to have community.
I can't wait till Steve finally gets his Oscar and we see a standing ovation, I think, we're going to get for Steve James. I'm predicting it right now.
Okay. Well, don't hold your breath on that one. I've gotten way more attention from not winning than getting nominated for Abacus really cramped my style because, it was just sort of like I was much better at the Susan Lucci or whatever of documentary.
Good stuff. All right, Matt, before we get to that review of Mowgli and play some trivia, we did throw a few items into the fish tank over there, and I know Phil wants to swim up to the surface and tell what we missed. Let's open up that fish tank.
Wait a moment! It's fish! Isn't it?
DC! Wake up!
No, Pat, it's a giant glass bowl. Hey, get some fish folk.
Who's coming with me besides Flipper? Here.
That's a Sicilian message. It means Luca Brasi sleeps with the fishes. You're gonna need a bigger boat.
Hey guys, how's it going this week?
Feeling better, Phil?
Yes, I think I'm sounding better too.
Yeah, you're getting there.
Yeah, it's not perfect still, but I think markedly better than last week. That being said, we have 2 questions in here this week. The first one, was there a film before Hoop Dreams that was shot on video before being released in film theatrically later? And as far as I could tell, I've been doing this for a while now, so I credit myself as at least above an amateur film historian. No, there wasn't. The next closest thing I could find was the movie Rainbow, starring Bob Hoskins and Dan Aykroyd. But that was released in 1995, so that's a year later.
And that was shot on video?
Yes, it was.
Wow.
Interesting.
Right.
So, yeah, good job, Steve. The next one, what Robert Greene film came out after Actress? I believe that was Kate Plays Christine from 2016.
Yep.
Awesome.
Cool.
That was it?
That's all we got.
All right, jump back in that fish tank.
Can do.
All right, Matt, let's end out this show with some fun trivia.
Let's do it.
As we mentioned, we went eye for an eye on Beale Street, so we're playing street movie trivia. Steve, you're our guest. You get to choose if you want to go first or let Matt go first. There are steals, and if you get hung up on any question, you get 1 trip into the fish tank for Filmy and Phil. And I will say, they start off easy.
Okay. I'm just going to let him go first.
Wow. Question 1.
Okay.
Matt K.
He defers.
Street movie trivia. Here we go. Jonah Hill and Channing Tatum brought this TV show to the big screen in 2012.
21 Jump Street. The crawling eyebrow scene is still one of my favorites.
Over to Steve. Question 2. In 2013, Leonardo DiCaprio teamed up with Martin Scorsese to tell the story of stockbroker Jordan Belfort. Name it.
It wasn't Wall Street. That's probably a name to another one. Answer to another one. Yeah. I mean, I remember the movie. I saw it. I just can't remember the name of it.
You're on the right track.
I know.
An animal in there.
Oh, The Wolf of Wall Street.
There we go. There we go.
Yes.
That's all I'm thinking. 1-1. Question 3 back over to Matt K.
That was generous.
You gotta get the juices flowing.
Yeah,
you'll be better from here on out.
Speaking of Wall Street, Matt, we all know Michael Douglas played Gordon Gekko in Wall Street, but who played young Bud Fox in the film?
See, in the hot seat, man. It's tough to. Oh,
Michael Douglas and who?
Yeah, Michael Douglas and I can't think of his name. I'm blanking, man. Buzz me. I
Sure. Guess.
No, I know who it is.
Give you 3 seconds.
The guy who plays the drug dealer in Ferris Bueller's Day Off at the very end of the movie. I just can't come up with his stinking name. I mean, Tiger's Blood, winning, #winning. Why can't I think of his name?
That might even be the clue here. Do you remember the actor's name who starred with Michael Douglas in Wall Street?
I not only can't remember his name, I can't remember his face. So.
Emilio Estevez's brother, for God's sake.
Charlie Sheen.
Thank you, Jesus.
Oh, yeah.
Charlie
How could I remember Emilio Estevez and not
Now
Charlie
I
Sheen?
remember.
Still 1-1. Question 4 over to Steve. Name the actor who played Stanley Kowalski in the 1951 classic, A Streetcar Named Desire.
Well, Marlon Brando. You've really thrown me a bone there.
Hey, they just go in order. I wrote them just in order.
I probably would have got that wrong.
2-1, Steve. Question 5 over to Matt K. Matt, name the 1947 film that starred Maureen O'Hara, John Payne, Natalie Wood, and Edmund Gwenn. It is said to be a holiday classic.
It's a holiday classic.
Yes.
And it's got street in the title?
Absolutely.
See, this is like just based on the year where I probably would have guessed A Streetcar Named Desire.
1947, Maureen O'Hara.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
It's really the only one you know, and you probably know Natalie Wood. Edmund Gwenn won the Academy Award for this.
I'm trying to think of a Christmas movie with... A Miracle on 34th Street. Damn.
There we go.
I think I got that earlier, though. I already said that title, remember,
Yes,
at the top
you
of the
did.
show. So
it was in your head.
I think it's 3-1. But I'm just saying.
Good stuff.
You really definitely helped me out there.
Hey, Matt, I know wouldn't know the answer to this one. Question 6 over to Steve. One of Martin Scorsese's early films starred Robert De Niro and Harvey Keitel. Came out in 1973.
Oh, yeah. Mean Streets.
Yeah, I would have got that wrong.
I knew you would have got that wrong. All right, 3-2, question 7 over to Matt K. Matt, John Carney, who directed the musical Once, also gave us this 2016 movie about young kids who make music videos to impress a girl.
This is question 6?
7.
7. I'll jump in the fish tank here.
Whoa, into the fish tank
Oh,
we
yeah,
go.
I forgot about the fish tank.
Yeah, Phil, what was the name of that John Carney film?
All right, Matt, your clue this week, SS, and is about music.
Yeah, well, I know one of the S's is street.
Ooh, what a smart guy.
It's probably not Sesame Street, I'm guessing. Can I hear the question one last time?
John Carney, who directed the musical Once, also gave us this 2016 movie
16.
about some kids who make a music video to impress a girl.
Oh, man. Sing Street. Sing Street. Wow. It just came to me.
Ties it up at 3. Last question of the ball game. It's a tough one. We'll see what happens here.
Well, I'm probably going to the fish tank.
Steve, name the Oscar-winning actress who starred in the movie The Last House on the Street in 2012. Elizabeth Shue played her mom in the film.
Yeah, I'd never watched any of those. I'm not a horror film.
Can we go into the fish tank?
Let's go to the fish tank.
Let's
Is it
go
The
into
Last House on the Street or The Last House on the Left?
This one's The Last House on the Street.
Interesting.
Different movie. Phil, what was the name of that Oscar-winning actress who starred in this film?
All right, Steve, your clue this week. This down-to-earth gal laid the J-Law when she won her Oscar in a movie that also starred Robert De Niro and Bradley Cooper.
Wait, say the clue again?
This down-to-earth gal laid down the J-Law when she won her Oscar in a movie that also starred Robert De Niro and Bradley Cooper.
Oh, wow. Jennifer Lawrence?
Yes. I've watched
What a
this
clue.
movie. It was,
He's working with me.
yeah.
You like the guest to win.
I've watched this movie, and it's not very good.
Really?
She made that movie the same year that she made Silver Linings Playbook. So
Really?
She's mainly made good choices. Red Sparrow, I liked it, but a lot of people didn't. So
Yeah, I just watched that on a plane. Good plane movie.
yeah, good plane movie.
Plain movie is right. Perfect. Steve does win this one 4-3. We if it comes down to a tie, we call it a jawbreaker here. And knowing that you were a basketball guy, I thought the jawbreaker should go to Steve, and it's this: who's better, Jordan or LeBron?
Well, I'm a Chicagoan. I mean, I think it's a tough one because LeBron, by the time he ends his career, will have eclipsed, I think, all of Jordan's records for the most part. But he will have taken considerably longer to do it. I think Jordan is the most spectacular player ever. LeBron is probably the most well-rounded player ever. But if I had to choose just based on performance, I think Jordan, because he did it, he did it in less years, and he even was gone for 2 years.
Right.
And had he been around for those 2 years, some of his, I think some of his records would have been even unreachable by LeBron in more years.
Yeah. On that note, really quick, because you were in Chicago at that point during the Pippen Jordan era there, where they couldn't lose. Were you going to a lot of games? Did you become a Bulls fan at that time?
Well, I was a Bulls fan, but I didn't get to go to a lot of games because I didn't have a lot of money and I didn't have tickets. So, but I tried to get to games when I could. And I saw Jordan score 55 points at the Chicago Stadium one time. I thought that was pretty great.
Yeah.
That is pretty great.
That is awesome. The real jawbreaker actually was age of Harvey Keitel closest to. Matt, you got a guess on Harvey?
Yeah, let's see. He's into his mid to late 70s, if not just dipping his toe into 80. I'll put him at 78 years old.
Wow. Steve, you got a guess on Harvey Keitel?
So when did Taxi Driver come out?
1978, 77?
6, actually.
Oh, okay.
He can check. So in 76, he was probably, I'm going to guess he was probably in his mid-30s. So that's 40 years ago, 42 years ago. What did you say?
I said 78.
Yeah. I'm going to go 77.
Wow, you guys are right on top of this. 79. 79 for Harvey Keitel.
Damn, I was trying to decide whether to go under you.
Yeah. The $1, Bob.
Yeah.
Yep.
Good stuff. Brings us to the end of a great jaw. And first and foremost, we do got to thank Steve for coming on. It's been a pleasure. Wasn't joking about saying that at the top. We had you circled right at the top. We said, someday we got to get Steve James to come in here and talk movies with us.
Well, my pleasure. It was a lot of fun.
And thanks for all the great films. I always look forward to the next Steve James project.
Yeah, same.
Thank you.
Yeah. We also got to thank our producer, the man behind the glass, Filmy and Phil.
Always happy to help out, guys.
We also got to thank our sponsors.
Yeah, thanks to all the sponsors, and thanks to the Chicago Podcast Co-op who help us get cool sponsors.
Yes, if you want to support Cinemajaw, please leave us a review anywhere you're listening to this podcast.
And while you're at it, click subscribe. It's like one extra click. Just do it.
That's it. Until next week, I'm Ryan the Movie Guy.
I'm Matt Kay, and keep on jawing about the movies.